Okay, thanks everyone for joining us. Scott, Chelsea, and Jack are live in Cleveland ahead of tomorrow's national championship game. First of all, guys, between the Final Four matchup this weekend and the eclipse coming through Cleveland, I have to imagine it's a pretty exciting place to be right now. What's the energy like in town?
Yeah, it's exciting, so exciting that there's no hotels. We have to change hotels and go get a hotel right after we're done with this.
Yep, so that's how popular things are right now, and we're just in the line of sight of the eclipse. You guys coming? You gonna come join us in Cleveland for the eclipse? But there's been plenty of people. We had open practice today for South Carolina and Iowa. It was open for anyone, and they estimated over 17,000 people were here for an open practice. We're talking practice.
Wow.
Practice, Allen Iverson, yes, but eclipse or otherwise, this is a women's basketball town this weekend. We saw it yesterday. 4 teams were here. There are only 2 teams or 2 fan bases that are going to be here on Sunday, and we're going to see them both show out.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of NCAA tournaments for the men, and they have open practices. There's usually maybe 1,000 at most. This seemed like a game was going on, and it was a crazy atmosphere. It really was. I've never seen anything like it for a practice.
No, there were a lot of fans.
What kind of impact does that energy have for the players? Seeing that many people turn out for just a practice, I have to imagine that's good fuel for the Hawkeyes going into tomorrow's game.
Yeah, the players, the Iowa players, and actually even the South Carolina players, they're used to this. They're used to being asked by a million little kids for autographs. They handle it great. Coach Bluter was in the stands today signing autographs. So they like this, and they've both been there before. So this is nothing new to them, and they really know how to handle the pressure.
Right, and viewership for that game, specifically Iowa-UConn, is breaking another record. But in this arena, yesterday was the game, guys?
Yes.
It's all blurring in right now. I love to see the South Carolina, the rally towels that they got going, and then it was very pro-Iowa for that game against UConn. All the way up. We were sitting all the way up there in the arena, and there were Hawkeye fans filling it here.
Yeah, and I think the 2 biggest fan bases in terms of loudest fan bases who came to the Final Four won their respective games. So the national title game, it might break a viewership record. It might top 20 million, but I think the in-arena environment will compete with any in-arena environment in the history of college basketball.
And the ratings on KCRG are going to be sky high.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
It's very exciting. I'm imagining, we keep breaking records viewership-wise for these games tomorrow. Are you guys expecting it to be, blown out of the water again?
Maybe for a championship game, yes.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus it's 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern, Sunday afternoon on KCRG. It's not just it's appointment television. It's also just a perfect time where it's the only show in town. Everything kind of lines up for it to break all kinds of records again.
And it's on ABC, which usually most people can get rather than an ESPN. So that channel difference does make a huge difference for fans.
Yeah, can I say something, Scott? It's just imagine.
I'm Chelsea.
Scott was about to talk, man.
You're all right.
You're good, Chelsea. I remember that 9.9 million we saw, and we were shocked when we saw LSU and Iowa average 9.9 million viewers on a Sunday, and we were like, wow, look at that. And now that number just seems tiny with everything going on.
It does.
Let's talk about the matchup tomorrow. You guys got the chance to talk to the players. How is South Carolina feeling, preparing to go up against the Hawkeyes tomorrow?
Well, South Carolina is a 6.5-point favorite, and that's probably about right. They don't lose very often, if you haven't heard. They're excited because their last loss was against Iowa. They're calling this the revenge tour. They're going to get their chance, and it was very interesting. I talked to the South Carolina point guard, Raven Johnson, today, and she said after that loss to Iowa, she locked herself in her room and could not stop crying. She said God actually helped her get over this loss, and she thinks about it all the time. She watched the Iowa-South Carolina game over 100 times. And then they told her you can't do that anymore.
Yeah. That was Raven. Ashton Johnson did not go back and watch that game at all. I mean, these were young players too at the time, but at the same time, you just mentioned just how strong this South Carolina program has been. They've won 79 of their last 80 games. Obviously, that one loss was to Iowa in the Final Four, but this is going to be a very tall test for the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, tall test indeed. I like the setup because the player to watch in Carolina red and black. Yeah, red and black is Camila Cardoso. The 6'7" center out of Brazil is just a force inside. Some of her teammates we were speaking to called her like a gentle warrior princess type player, and she's not just the big who gets the ball down low, turns around, puts it in. She can defend anywhere on the court. She can shoot pretty much all around the paint. She's going to be an absolute handful for Iowa bigs.
Yeah, that's the biggest difference between last year's team. South Carolina has figured out to go inside out, and they have shooters now. They didn't have a lot of great shooters last year. This is 5 new starters. Crazy to think about. Right. They have 5 new starters at South Carolina, and they have some shooters this year. So they'll go inside. She doesn't have the shot. She'll find the open player when everyone crashes down on her, and it's working right now. They looked really good in the second half.
Yeah, that was what was missing in last year's Iowa South Carolina matchup, was that perimeter shooting. And, you know, we saw the video of Caitlin Clark kind of just waving off Raven Johnson because she knew she wasn't going to take the attempt. That has completely changed for this South Carolina team. Along with Camila, though, there are going to be 4 or 5 tall players in the post that are going to be rotating through, because the South Carolina bench is also very deep. They are just very, very talented.
Yeah, and I think this job that South Carolina head coach Dawn Staley did this year is one of the most impressive we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years in college basketball, to replace the entire starting lineup and to take the biggest weakness, three-point shooting, and turn that into the biggest strength. Tahina Paopao is arguably the best three-point shooter in the nation. She transferred in to South Carolina, and flipping it over to Iowa, if Iowa were to compete and win this game, it would just make that even more impressive. A win on Sunday could prove to be even more impressive than Iowa's win last year in the Final Four against South Carolina.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, you know, all the way to the championship game, we've talked about teams and their weaknesses. We cannot find any weaknesses in this team. So, as you said, it's going to be a tall task. But Iowa, you know, they seem to find a way to get it done.
You mentioned new faces on South Carolina. Iowa's a lot of familiar faces for their fans, including a lot of seniors. With this being seniors' last game, how are they feeling? Any emotions coming into play for the national championship?
Well, I had a chance to talk to Kate Martin today, and she said they want to win a national title, not just for their coaches and themselves, but the Iowa fan base. They really want to show their appreciation and win a natty and bring it back to Iowa City.
We would all love to see that, especially just for how special this group is, for how many years they've put in. Obviously, Caitlin Clark in her 4, Sharon Goodman in her 4, but then Molly Davis is a 5th year, and obviously she's had just kind of a rough tournament watching from the sideline, but she's still here. She's still being supportive of her team. And then also Gabby Marshall, a 5th year as well, who chose to come back. And then Kate Martin, the oldest, the grandma we'll call her, 6 years. I mean, that is how much she has loved being around this Iowa basketball program.
Yeah, these seniors are just emotional, but they're not letting the emotions get in the way, specifically with Caitlin Clark. I asked her in the press conference, she was on the dais, and I said, how are you managing your emotions knowing this is your last game? And she said, well, I think those emotions are going to come later, maybe when the clock hits 0, but right now I just have to focus on the game. I have to treat it like just another game, because like you said, she really wants to win a national title, not just for her and her coaches, for her teammates and those fans. Those Iowa fans show up and pack the place. We were there for the party on the Pentagrast. They did all that for a team that came in second. That's a fan base that deserves to celebrate a team that comes in first.
By the way, Kate Martin looked really good today after getting popped in the nose last night. She showed some incredible toughness to come back and play, and that's kind of the heart of this team right now, is they're showing their toughness. So even if they're not hitting their shots, they are finding a way, and that's a sign of a championship team. We'll see if that happens again tomorrow.
Well, and I think one thing, too, as they keep testing this alarm in the arena, Probably for safety precautions, so we'll just allow it. But at the same time, when you talk about this group, they just enjoy being around each other so much. Even when they won their game against UConn, one of the first things they said is, "We get to practice again." I mean, they're just so excited to see each other for one more practice. That one was today, and then obviously one more game, so 40 more minutes together on the court.
Yeah, I would just echo the exact same sentiment. These players absolutely love each other.
Yeah, that comes from Coach Bluter, too.
And tomorrow, obviously, game gets started at 2, but we have some exciting pregame stuff going on. What should folks look out for ahead of the championship game?
Yeah, we're going to have the pregame show, I believe, starts at 1:30, right? Am I correct on that?
Central time,
One-
correct? Eastern, so 12:30.
12:30 back home, I'm sorry. 12:30 back home. We're going to have a half-hour special. We got some great stories on basically everyone. We take a look at the preview of the South Carolina team. We'll have some stuff with Caitlin Clark and the mentality that she plays with. And that really came in handy yesterday because she started off really struggling in the first half. But she figured out she didn't get mad at herself. She figured out how to get the ball to her teammates, and that made a big difference and showed her maturity last night.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories that I've done that you'll be able to see in the special is about Lisa Bluter, Jan Jensen, Jenny Fitzpatrick, Fitzgerald, and just that culture that they have, that 24 years each of them in Iowa. And I think we've seen the culture kind of come through in players like Abby Marshall and Sydney Folter. They don't care about the flashy stats. They don't care about the big numbers or 20, 30-point performances. The culture of that team says you are a contributor. You are important, whether you are on the bench, on the floor, scoring 50 or scoring 0.
Yeah, they're very good at recruiting, and not just talented players, but they look at character and people they really want on their team, and that makes a huge difference, and you can see that with this team.
All right, thanks, guys. We will let you get ready for tomorrow's championship game, and good luck with finding a hotel with all the traffic around there.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Sleep right here on the court, maybe.